For the past 11 months, the Rainforest Flying Squad has been lined up against Teal Jones, the courts, the RCMP, and the NDP government. After 11 months, we are still here and we are not going anywhere.
So what is your name and what is the organization you're with?
I'm Kathy Code. I'm a spokesperson for the Rainforest Flying Squad. I've been associated with the movement since late August 2020.
So what is the Rainforest Flying Squad for people who don't know?
It's an evolution of a movement that began with a group of hikers that hiked up to the mountains there in the hills of Vancouver Island and saw the forest before them and knew that they had to save it. And so from that tiny little hiking group, it's grown to the Save the Fairy Creek movement and now to the Flying Rainforest Squad movement, which is a bigger perspective, and it seems to be growing by leaps and bounds still. It's still evolving.
How would you describe the situation at Fairy Creek?
Well, we're in our 11th month of holding camps. We've been holding the camps through the BC winter and now through the BC sweltering heat wave. We are now nearing the end of the second month of RCMP enforcement. Our will has not wavered at all. We are still determined to save the trees and the forest, and willing to look at all the issues that have come out of just trying to save the forests.
For people who don't know, how would you describe the Fairy Creek watershed?
Well, right now it's the last intact watershed in, I believe, in South Vancouver Island. That also holds designated areas for marbled murrelets and some wildlife habitat areas. So it's a really, really important ecosystem, and it's really important that it remains intact.
And then what is the Rainforest Flying Squad's relationship with the Indigenous communities in the area?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we are actually there holding our camps at the invitation of Elder Bill Jones. He's a member of the Patchadat First Nations, and he has had a long time concern about the future for his people. He realizes that saving the old growth is going to be significant for the future and for the well-being of his people.
How many members are associated now with the rainforest?
Oh gosh, we are really a loosely knit, volunteer-driven organization with people from all walks of life, everybody from lawyers and doctors to moms and dads, and to tell you the truth, we're so loosely organized that we have no idea of how many people. We just know that there's hundreds of people who are willing to show up at the camps. There are thousands, tens of thousands of people who are willing to donate to us. We have, captured, I think, the imagination of the BC public, and as well as attracted attention around the world now.
Why is it so important to save these old growth ecosystems?
These are non-renewable forests. You cut them down, they will never return. We have to save them. There's so much biodiversity contained within them. We don't even know everything that is in them. They are also really significant and crucial for our climate change crisis. They are what will save us from ourselves. They are capable of controlling the weather, cooling things down, sequestering carbon, storing carbon. They are everything that we need as a technological tool to save us from ourselves.
What has the relationship been with police in the area?
Yeah, the RCMP, as I mentioned, have been enforcing the injunction for 2 months now. They are not exactly enforcing the injunction, they are enforcing everything but the injunction. They have created imaginary and arbitrary exclusion zones, which apparently is against their own ethics. They are reacting to our protesters with harm and brutality, and I've seen some video footage that is really quite concerning. I know the police are anxious to keep the media out of the areas where they are extracting people, and they're demanding that they stay within the exclusion zones. But this is not allowing media proper access, and I understand that the Canadian Association of Journalists have now launched a legal action against this.
What about the relationship with loggers? Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, the loggers have not been overly friendly, shall we say. We have had several altercations with them where they have attacked, especially our Indigenous youth. They've thrown rocks, they've yelled vulgarities. Even online, they are often expressing themselves in rather crude terms. We as a nonviolent movement make sure that everything that we do is peaceful, honorable, and yet we remain immovable. So that is our ethic, as opposed to the loggers.
Can you speak to what the movement is asking for in terms of, like, no one is asking for loggers to lose their jobs?
No, that's right. We're not anti-logging at all. You know, there's lots of available second growth harvest that should be available in the tree farm license. If the forest industry has planted as they said they should, and so those harvests should be available now. The fact is that nobody needs to lose jobs. In fact, there's more jobs in restoration. There's more jobs in having the forest standing, whether it's recreation, education, spiritual needs, health and well-being. There's a lot of opportunity within the forest. Then one prime example of that is the Wildwood Ecoforest. I'm on the board of the Ecoforestry Institute Society, and we own and operate Wildwood Ecoforest. It's been harvested since 1945, still a standing forest, and now we have developed a business model where we can include education and tourism and all sorts of associated activities, and while creating jobs and while creating revenue without having to cut the forest down.
Do you have any sense of the cost of the Teal Jones? Well, first, how much money gets put back into the community from cutting down forests versus saving the forest? Do you have any sense of the cost associated?
Yeah, well, I know that Teal Jones hires subcontractors, so I mean there are local jobs that are created that way. I also know that out of the whopping profits that Teal Jones makes, this year, a new forest sharing revenue agreement has been signed with the Pachadat, and $242,000 will go to them this year, which is a paltry amount when you consider the profits that Teal Jones is making. In their injunction against the Rainforest Flying Squad, Teal Jones has testified that we are blocking them from approximately $9 million worth of old growth. This is all contained in some 200 hectares. So it's still a very small area, but that's $9 million worth of profit to them. $2 million of that then goes to the government in terms of stumpage fees. $242,000 then goes to the Pachadat First Nation. Then on top of Teal Jones' take on that, they add another process. By processing all of those logs, they add another value of that of another $10 million. So they're getting $20 million out of this that goes to the company. It doesn't go to the local communities. It obviously doesn't go to the Pachadat, and little is returned to the government then in terms of, you know, what they claim is necessary revenue for schools and hospitals. I mean, that barely covers anything. That's just on the old growth. So we're not talking about the second growth harvesting that they're still making oodles of money off of. So it's a very lucrative market for them. Old growth is like the white rhino of BC's forests now. So we have to do everything that we can to save the last remaining forests.
Let's talk about the BC government. What is going on from your perspective in terms of John Horgan and the NDP?
Well, so far what I've seen of the NDP government is that they have really close ties and with United Steelworkers Union, with the Truck Loggers Association, with the BC Council of Forest Industries. So they have declared their alliance pretty well in defending their jobs and their right to revenue. And that's all very well. We support that everybody needs a job out of this. We're just saying that you cannot cut the old growth forest. This is a very short-sighted plan when we need the forest for so much. We need it for the First Nations rights and sovereignty and their title. These are still unceded lands that belong to the Pacheedaht, and they're getting so very little benefit out of it. So that needs to change. There's the whole biodiversity issue where we're losing so much biodiversity every time a forest is cut down. We've lost all that. The climate change benefits of carbon sequestration and storage, again, that's huge. And just the social and economic justices that come out of this, because the communities are not benefiting that much. You know, we're getting ecotourism companies now that are in dire straits because now they can't operate their businesses because the RCMP won't let them through their roadblocks. These are public roads. I mean, that's unconscionable that one industry has to be sacrificed for the benefit of another because the government is so closely aligned with that. That seems to me not the role of government. Government should be representing the public interest and the public interest of all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. The legal system is very complicated, and you're by no means a lawyer, but can you speak to some of the legal processes that are going on?
Yeah. I mean, the first obstacle that we encountered was the injunction hearing itself, where Justice Verhoeven, I guess through case precedent, said that the only thing that he could consider then was that Teal Jones has a signed agreement with government. And that's all he needed to know to approve the injunction against us. Nothing else mattered. It didn't matter that it was against the public interest. It didn't matter that climate change is upon us. In fact, Justice Verhoeven acknowledged that climate change is a grave danger to humanity and directed us in talking to government then about the issue. That was his solution. But in the meantime, though, this injunction allows Teal Jones the right to log. And we know that is the minute that we leave those camps, that they will be in there logging as fast as they can. The very next day, actually.
Are there other cases or appeals now, processes that are going through the court system?
Yes. Yeah, we've invited the government in with the application of a third-party notice. So we're in that process right now. We've also got a couple of individual appeals to the injunction. We have another party that is filing protesting the arrests and the way that they are made by the RCMP. We're also looking at how RCMP are, passing over our personal possessions and cars to Teal Jones, which is a private company. What right do they have to give our stuff to Teal Jones, and then Teal Jones is charging us $2,500 a vehicle to get those vehicles back again? That they're not an impound company. They are a logging company. So I fail to see how that works in the legal system. So these are the things that we're looking at contesting in court.
How many arrests have there been to date? Do you know?
About 330 now to date. And I understand that Teal Jones now is making application to lay the costs of those prosecutions on the court, i.e. the government and the taxpayer. They don't want to pony up the court costs, in other words, of prosecuting over 300 people. I mean, I'm sure that will kind of dig into their profit margins a little, but for them, to be able to do that, and it'll be up to the court to decide that, I think, in another week or so. That comes before the courts. So we will have to see if the court actually will allow them to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned the cost that the government makes, approximately $2 million from destroying this watershed. Once you factor in the cost of the protests, the cost of the police, the cost of the court system, how much do you think is being spent versus of the taxpayer dollar versus how much is being recouped?
I would suspect that all of that $2 million that goes to government would have evaporated by now in all of those assorted costs. So yeah, the taxpayer is again bearing the brunt of this, and unnecessarily so, because all the government has to do is issue a minister's directive. It costs nothing in order to save the forest. So they could do that right now. They are putting forward, panels and studies and all this while they are still, logging and talking, now logging and studying. So we have to find a way to stop that cycle and get them to make a definitive decision then that the old growth throughout BC, not just TFL 46, all the old growth throughout BC needs to be saved. So I'll give you some numbers on that. So according to the Sierra Club's estimations, there's 1.3 million hectares of old growth forest remaining in BC. This is out of an entire forest cover of 60 million acres. Okay, so we have 1.3. Not all of it is tremendous, the magnificent old growth forests that we like to see. Some of it is scrubby and not very economical at all. But it's still old growth forests. They still hold biodiversity and ecosystems. So they're important. They're really important to keep with us. Now, the study, The Last Stand for Biodiversity by Price, Holt and Doust, they have estimated that out of that 1.3 million, there are 415,000 hectares of forest then with big trees. Now, and that is further divided down with 380,000 hectares of forest with big trees and 35,000 hectares of forest with really big trees, which would be like your 2,000-year-old cedars, right? 35,000 hectares. We need to save this. We need to. The eyes of the world are upon us. This is a valuable resource, and it needs our stewardship. And we need to not be cutting it down. We need to be stewarding it responsibly.
A couple more questions. This is so interesting. You're such an amazing speaker, and I appreciate it so much. I picked the right person to speak on behalf
thank
of
you.
the squad.
Oh, thank you.
Could you just speak to John Horgan's moratorium and the agreement between the Pachidat and Dididat nations, and what is your take on the moratorium?
Yeah, it's a deferral. It's not a moratorium. Our concern and our ties have been with the Pachidat through Elder Bill Jones. It's his contention that the elected band council of the Pachidat are not representative of the rest of the band members. That the band council is signing agreements without consulting. They are exercising their authority through orders in council, which apparently relieves them of the necessity of consulting with the rest of the band. So the rest of the band doesn't know what's going on, basically. So Bill Jones is, a man in his elder years. He's very concerned for the future of his people, for the well-being of his people. He wants to see his people then actively involved in decision making and actively involved in knowing about their forest, knowing about their history, and finding ways to move forward in a world that belongs to them, doesn't necessarily belong to us. It might be, a marriage of Western and Indigenous culture, but there has to be a way forward that we can all work this out together and collaboratively.
And what message would you have for John Horgan and the BC government?
Save the old growth. It's all you need to do. There's no more need for study, no more need for panels. It's just time to issue the minister's directive. Stop cutting the old growth.
Cool. Thank you very much.